Hello again, Isaac Snow here with Snow Wonder YouTube channel. In this episode I will be taking Merriam turkey wing feathers and turning them into homemade arrow fletchings. Hope you enjoy. So the feathers that I'm using for these fletchings are Merriam turkey wing feathers off of the Merriam that I shot with Fletcher in my most recent video upload. So before we cut feathers, we need to first identify right from left feathers. And you'll see here, you've got a real wide side on one side of the quill and a real narrow side on the other side of the quill. And the narrower side, the tighter side to the quill, is going to be the part of the feather that lays forward. So this is obviously a right wing feather versus this one, where the tight side of the feather is on this side of the quill. That's a left feather. And the reason you want to identify left from right in this particular scenario is I'm using left and right wing template cutouts. So you'll see here, this is a left wing, this one here is a right wing. So this is a pretty simple process, and what you're going to want is a good sharp knife, some super glue, and if you have one, it's kind of a necessity, a straight fletching jig, not a helical jig. And that will be for the sanding process. So you will also need some sandpaper. I like 100 grit sandpaper to really get them flat for gluing onto the shafts of the arrows. So I'm going to start with my right wing feathers, and I start out by laying the feather flat on the table, and then I take my knife. You want a good sharp knife. This is a Benchmade, really sharp tip, but it also kind of has a rounded tip, which I like because I can steer it a little better as I'm splitting the quill. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to take my knife, drive it into the table through the quill, and then I'm just going to grab this part of the feather, the bottom of the quill, and I'm going to pull it toward me. And as I pull it, a lot of times your knife wants to run off to one side or the other. So I steer the cutting action with the knife instead of trying to steer it with the feather. I'm going to start by pulling and splitting the quill here. You can see I'm turning my knife a little bit. Get it split like that, and discard this part of the feather. So now I like to trim off this end of the feather here where there's not quite enough meat there to get it to stick to the arrow. Take my knife, trim the end off. Okay, so now that we have our feather split and the end trimmed off, this part's a little bit tricky. So the quill here, you want to be able to set inside this groove on your fletching template. And a lot of times after you split them, it won't quite fit in there. So this is a right wing feather. So we're going to use our right wing template. And when you try and put the quill into that groove, a lot of times it's too big. It won't quite slide in there. And it takes just a little bit of trimming off of the thickness of this quill. This part is really tedious. You'll probably ruin a few feathers in the process, but over time you'll kind of get the hang of it. So I got that piece off there. I try to shave it off very lightly, very delicately, trim it down to size. And now it should slide right in there. You'll feel it pop in. So now I set the feather on the table and carefully cut along the edge of our template. There's the back side. There you have your fletching. Now on most feathers you should be able to get 2 and sometimes even 3 fletchings out of one feather. But as you get farther down here, it gets more difficult because your quill gets wider and it requires even more trimming. And I've just noticed that as I get down here, it gets a little woodier and harder to trim as I work my way down toward the tip of the quill. And now you just repeat this process until you feel like you have enough fletchings to do the arrows that you want to do. And before they go on the arrow, we'll do a little more fine tuning to that quill so that they sit on the shaft properly. Now I'm going to switch over to my left wing template because this is a left wing feather. So now I'm going to take our roughly cut fletching and we're going to fine tune this quill a little bit more. And this is where your straight arrow fletching jig will come into play. And some of this you'll want to trim up a little bit. You'll see I've got a little bit extra hanging off down in here. Once again, you just want to just barely nick it and take it off in really thin little strips. Otherwise you'll get too deep. So now we will take our sandpaper. I'm using 100 grit sandpaper. And we're just gonna pinch it tight so the feather can't rock back and forth in there, and work it down on the sandpaper. And there we go. We got a nice flat surface that'll stick to our arrow shaft nice. The glue will stick nice. I've got a decent number of fletchings finished here, so now I'm going to start the process of gluing them on the shafts. And for these arrows, I'm going to be using a right hand helical and gluing onto carbon shafts. I like using Gorilla Super Glue. There's lots of other different glues out there, actual fletching glues, but I've found Gorilla Super Glue to work as good as anything else. Looking pretty good. And there you have your turkey fletching arrow. Now once I'm done fletching these, I always like to take a small amount of super glue and apply it right here at the very tip of the fletching, because it seems like anytime you blow a fletching, it always starts right at the front here and then just peels back. There we go. There's my third and final arrow. We'll let these dry a little bit longer and then we'll take them outside and take some test shots and see if they hold up. Alright, so it's been about 20 minutes since I let these dry. I'm going to take a couple shots and make sure they hold up. Okay, and for the real speed test, I'm going to shoot them through my Hoyt VTM compound bow. If they're going to fly off, this should do it. I'm pretty happy with it. They don't appear to want to fly off, and I would be totally confident in hunting with these fletchings for my hunting arrows. Well, that's it for this video. I'm really happy with the way these turned out, and I'll be fletching a bunch more in the future. I really enjoyed doing it, and I love getting some good use out of these beautiful feathers out of the turkeys that I harvest. I'm going to put a link in the video description to the fletching cutout templates that you can buy on Three Rivers Archery, and I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one.